All right. Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. I am your host, Sean Engel, and with me today we have DFS Marlin, Mark Hogan, back on the show with me. No Rich Miletto this week. It's just the two of us, but I'm pretty sure we can cover it all very well and nice and tight here too. You can find me on X at SeanE247, and you can find Mark over there at DFS Marlin out there fishing for money and fishing for sports wins. And all you can find all this stuff there. So we're in here with the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, and we are a part of FantasyGuru.com, where you can go over there. You can get the Game Time MVP all-in package. Gets all the different sports out there, including NBA and NHL, both of which are ongoing right now for just one price. There's a whole bunch of other package deals that you can get over there, such as the MVP Platinum or the all-in packages. Now, I've been also told that even though the DFS or betting packages, the BOGO deal, where you can buy one DFS package, get the betting package free, is expired, maybe, just maybe, you can email support at fantasyguru.com in order to help get you the best possible deal there. Sweeten the deal and maybe get the support people some nice stuff there. I won't say what for taking away Rich's words there with that one, but there you go. And with that in mind, you can get any of the packages where you can read more content from myself or Mark over there, who contributes to multiple sports, helps a lot of people win. Welcome to the show, by the way, Mark. So,
yeah, Sean, I appreciate you having me on. Very excited for another week in NASCAR. And yeah, like you said, I mean, we're getting after it. This is the best time of year when it comes to sports. You know, we got NBA season just started the other night. NFL, we're full go with that. We got the World Series coming up here for MLB. So, and we've got it covered across the board. We've been on fire from an NFL standpoint. And NBA, man, I'm excited about that. You know, it's going to take a couple games in to build some data here, but with Fency leading the way and with some of the other contributors on that front, got a really strong NBA crew that we can make a lot of money off of this year too. So get on some of that other action with some of the other sports too as NASCAR starts to come to a close.
Yeah, because the NASCAR season, we only have 3 weeks left of activity, and then basically NASCAR goes on break until the Daytona. Well, really, it's the Clash and then the Daytona 500 next year in February. So we'll get some time off to prep for that. But who knows? Maybe we might still pop in occasionally with some extra NASCAR content within the off season coming up here. So yeah, just a few more weeks there, Mark.
Oh yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll have a NASCAR holiday conversation. Talk a little Denny Hamlin over Christmas, New Year's.
We could talk about maybe some of the driver fights and tempers to find out which drivers are sending the others greeting cards for Christmas this year.
Oh, I love that. That's a great segment.
Yeah. I like the idea of that too. We should definitely think about that. I have other ideas to pitch around. So
let's do it.
All right. For our show this week, well, we got Homestead coming up. This will be the second race in the round of 8 for the Cup Series in the playoffs, and as well as the second race during the Xfinity Series latest round in the playoffs as well. Both of those series ran, but how about we recap how we got here? Let's talk and recap Las Vegas there, Mark. So getting on into it, there was no Truck Series race. They took their last off weekend of the season here. So just like the Xfinity Cup Series, they're going to be with us for the end here. In the Xfinity Series, though, with Las Vegas, the Dinger is back. AJ Allmendinger, he found victory lane for the first time this year by closely staying ahead of Ryan Sieg, Justin Allgaier, Chandler Smith, and Parker Kligerman there. That's an interesting top 5, Mark.
Oh yeah, I think Allmendinger was definitely a bit of a surprise in this race, and definitely some drama towards the end with the end of the race restart. So a lot to unpack on that one, but man, I got killed by Brandon Jones. I think he went from like 6th to 17th on that final restart. So that crushed a lot of my lineups that I had going out there for Xfinity.
Man, that is a shame because, there has been times where Brandon Jones has looked promising, like he's had fast cars in practice. Maybe he's qualified well. Heck, he did get on the pole this past weekend, and unfortunately for him, he set a record there with getting the most poles ever for an Xfinity Series driver, but to not win a race from the pole.
It's frustrating.
We talked about it a little bit in the Discord there during the past weekend there about whether to use Jones or not. I know I chimed in during the Xfinity Series race a little bit before that, and I was like, I don't know. I'm a little iffy on Jones. I think he has a good car to maybe finish top 10, but to win, I don't know. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. And, well, he really did worse than that even.
Yeah, well, what's so frustrating because I was on him. I just wanted him to finish top 10, maybe a top 5, somewhere around there. I mean, he was running in the top 10 the whole race, and then just on that final restart, that's when he dropped back. So I think he just got caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, and sometimes drivers just lose all momentum at the wrong time, and that can absolutely kill a DFS lineup right there.
Well, maybe we can see some stronger finishes with him with a change of scenery going into next year. So
That's true. He is going back to Joe Gibbs Racing for the 2025 season, so we shall see how that goes. But one driver that did end up having a strong finish, but also kind of suffered another heartbreaker, though, was Ryan Sieg. He got another second-place run at a mile-and-a-half intermediate after losing to Sam Mayer in a photo finish earlier in the year. That one has to really sting for Sieg. He's so close once again.
yeah, but paid off from a DFS perspective for sure. So really nice to roster a guy like that, and that was kind of what held intact a lot of my lineups. I think we'll see more of Sieg here, and maybe a win going into early next year. We'll see.
Well, if he does win, he is going to break an Xfinity Series record for most races started before their first win. They were saying even on the broadcast over 362 races that he's ran and never won. So
He's gonna do it, man. I have faith. He's gonna do it. And we're getting close here. He's in the hunt.
true. If only he was actually in the playoffs, and then he'd probably be even more motivated to get that too.
True. Very true.
Speaking of playoffs, let's talk about the playoff drivers here for a moment because they had a lot of strong performances in this Xfinity race during the past weekend there. So I'm going to go through the whole list. There's 8 drivers currently in the Xfinity playoffs. We know that Allmendinger won. Justin Allgaier, he finished 3rd, so great run for him. Chandler Smith was 4th. Jesse Love finished 6th, so pretty solid run there for the rookie. Cole Custer was 8th. Man, we expected a little more out of him, but still a solid run overall. Austin Hill ended up just cracking the top 10. Sam Mayer was 14th and was kind of a little underwhelming, but that really the biggest disappointment of them all was Sammy Smith in 32nd there.
Yeah, I think and looking ahead, Cole Custer sticks out to me as someone who maybe let some people down and could have a big bounce back week this week. But yeah, it was very interesting to see a lot of these guys. 6 of the 8 playoff drivers finish in the top 10. So got to keep that in mind when we're building lineups as we typically want to prioritize some of these playoff drivers here.
That is true. And especially as you noted in your article this past weekend, you actually highlighted 3 of the playoff drivers there with Custer, Chandler Smith, and Jesse Love overall.
Oh yeah. You have to. It has to be part of your core. You have to consider playoff drivers. They're going to, probably qualify high. Do everything they can to start at the front. They're going to be aggressive, but some of those aggressive moves typically pay off. So I'll be doing that heavy again going into this weekend as well.
Oh, yeah, especially when you see how close it is, even for the final playoff spot there. Now, we know Allmendinger, he's locked into the championship race at Phoenix, so he doesn't have to worry about points or winning at this point. He could just go out there, have fun, and try to get the best finishes he can. But really, though, that final playoff spot is currently held by Chandler Smith by 8 points over Austin Hill, so it is very close there, Mark.
It's very close, but it just doesn't it feel like Austin Hill's fading away right now? I mean, it just seems like he's just kind of there, and we're not seeing any kind of bold moves out of him over the last couple of races.
He hasn't been over the last few races. I'd say that Austin Hill, he's been quietly hanging around the top 10, but not really making his presence known at the front, because looking back towards his last couple of finishes, 4 finishes inside of 14th or better in the last 5 races, with 3 of those being top 10. So he has been running all right, but maybe not. There's doubts about if it's going to be well enough to have him advance to the championship.
And I mean, out of the playoff drivers, I think we're looking at, as far as Vegas goes, I think they've got him with the worst odds amongst the yeah, even Sammy Smith is in front of him. So he's tied actually on DraftKings with Jesse Love for a win and top 5 here for this race, both plus 1,800 for the win and plus 230 for a top 5.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, though, especially because these RCR cars of Love and Hill, even though they're not really putting out a lot of presence towards the front, though, having them maybe compete for a top 5 is definitely not out of the question, though.
No, but Jesse Love's been, I mean, we've talked about it, I feel like every week, but he's been super impressive. So, maybe he again, keeps pushing in front of him here.
Especially for a rookie, too.
Yeah, I think that rookie of the year is solidified here for him at this point.
Truly, I do really think so, especially with how far he's gotten into the playoffs. And his only other real competition for the Rookie of the Year title was SVG. So,
yeah.
All right, let's get into the place differential plays of the week here. The top ones. The top one of the week was Sheldon Creed gaining 29 positions. He was kind of the obvious chalk play of the week there. You kind of had to start him. He had high rostership, and he did pay off as expected there. Other than that, gaining 18 positions was Daniel Dye, who started 30th, finishing in the 12th position. So pretty nice run for him overall there, and looking forward to see how he does in the Xfinity Series full-time next year. And then gaining 11 positions was Brennan Poole, who started 32nd and finished 21st there, Mark.
Yeah, I really liked, I think I wrote up Brennan and Poole and Sheldon Creed. I was looking at Daniel Dye, but I just there wasn't enough indicators for me to seriously invest in him. Dyes look certainly good at times here, but Sheldon Creed was the layup. We talked about it a few weeks ago on the podcast, but anytime you see these guys opt to start in the back to switch out like an engine or a motor or whatever it was that he wanted to switch out, typically, we see positive movement from those guys pretty quickly and early on in the race. So I will point out he almost got caught in a wreck there. So just keep in mind, you don't want to go 100% even on this chalk. You want to try to just match what you think the ownership's going to be in whatever tournament or contest you're playing. And then just have a little bit, maybe just a little bit where you don't have them at all, just in case, because that is massive leverage if something were to happen to him. If he would have wrecked there in that, I think it was pretty early on in the race too. 85% of DFS lineups in the tournament that I played in at least would have been dead. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's true, because at the point where he was in the race too, he would definitely finish in the higher 30s if that ended up ending his race at the time too, which even that still would have been a positive day for him overall. I mean, it still wouldn't have been nowhere near as big as how it would have became.
Oh yeah. I mean, for the price point too, it would have just restricted you so much.
Truly. Getting into the worst place differential plays of the week, we already mentioned the worst one. It was Sammy Smith. He started 5th, finished 32nd, then losing 26 positions, 1 position less than Sammy Smith, was Shane Van Gisbergen, who started 16th. He finished 38th after he had some fuel pump issues, and then losing 20 spots was Taylor Gray. Man, the bad luck just continues for Taylor Gray there. He started 13th, and he ended up finishing 33rd.
Yeah, he's really hit a bad string of races here, but then SVG too. I think that's why we're pretty much on the fact that Jesse Love has solidified that spot over him. It almost doesn't feel like SVG is just kind of checked out with Xfinity. Like he's just looking ahead towards the Cup Series at this point. So I don't know. I mean, that's kind of my perspective on it. Obviously, that's not, he's still doing what he can to race well, but it almost seems like the focus is on the Cup Series just a little bit more here now.
Yeah, since he's only really going to be on the track just to get more oval experience at this point, and that's why we've seen him sometimes even in the Cup races pulling double duty a little bit more now too. So
yeah, yep.
Getting into the stage winners, stage 1 winner was Cole Custer. Stage 2 winner was Justin Allgaier. Now, AJ Allmendinger, even though he didn't win either of the stages, he dominated and led the most laps with 102. Justin Allgaier, he led 42 laps. Custer led 31 laps. Brandon Jones did lead 11 laps. Sammy Smith led 5. Riley Herbst led 4. Jesse Love led 3 laps. Ryan Sieg led 2. And Parker Kligerman led 1 singular lap. So now we have our big list of finishers here. Is there anybody that we feel we should give a nod to before we head on to Cup recaps here?
Man, I mean, I think we already said it, but Allmendinger for sure. No one really sticks out a whole lot beyond that. And, it was just fascinating to see him lead 102 laps. So that was probably the biggest surprise for me was the winner.
Yeah, true. I mean, it took this long before AJ Allmendinger got his first win of the year in the Xfinity Series, which is very uncharacteristic of him since usually he's been a multi-time winner the past couple of years. But it just goes to show how much college racing has fallen within the past couple of years. But maybe they're on the upswing now.
Yeah, we'll see.
Getting into the list here, both of the Stewart-Haas racing cars of Riley Herbst and Cole Custer did finish top 10, so they had a good day overall. Corey Heim almost finished in the top 10 as well for Sam Hunt Racing. And other than that, it's really about what you expect with where a lot of these drivers ended up finishing. So with that in mind, how about we move on to the Cup Series and quickly go over that? But, Mark, I got to say, he just keeps getting away with the right circumstances. And by getting away with the right circumstances, I'm talking about Joey Logano, because he went from being out of the playoffs to now being into the playoffs. And now he's going to the championship round because he won on Las Vegas with fuel strategy and a good enough gap in order to stay ahead of Christopher Bell.
Yeah, him and Hamlin were up there on that different fuel strategy. And then it just seems like every button he presses, it ends up being the right one. Almost feels like he's going to win it all this year. So I hate to get ahead of ourselves, but all kinds of conspiracy theories behind that. I mean, he just looks like a winner. So, regardless of, where he stands, whether his back's in the corner, like you just said, with the playoffs in general, he comes out swinging and claws his way out. So, it didn't, it certainly helped that he had Blaney, even though he was a few laps down blocking Christopher Bell there at the end of the race. So I thought that was kind of a fascinating element of that in that final lap. But I think he's primed to, he might be the favorite at this point.
I don't know what it is, because we went from basically seeing that Logano was out of the playoffs at the Roval. Then the Bowman disqualification happened, and then he got back in as a result. And now he goes forth and wins this race. And now all of a sudden he's a championship favorite. And I'm telling you, it's like what I've mentioned on the show the past few weeks there. There's that whole thing where on every even numbered year since 2016, he's made the championship round. And now he's somehow found his way there again.
It's a conspiracy. Hey, I think you might be onto something.
It's crazy, man. This is like the wildest way that it could happen now.
It was impressive. Christopher Bell, I mean, if you had him in your lineups, he's still paid off with all of those laps led. So, he'll be a contender. I like Christopher Bell going into this week just because of the fact that he came in second and lost at the end there and just couldn't catch up to Logano in time. So, you got to think Christopher Bell is going to come out swinging this race.
Oh, yeah. As him and a few other drivers that we're going to be talking about a little later on in the show here. So it did come down to fuel strategy, and we know that Logano's crew chief, Paul Wolf, he is like the mastermind there. he pulled off so many different strategy-based wins with Brad Keselowski and now Joey Logano there. So it's the name we have to keep in mind, just because if we've seen it before with Logano, he's doing it again. As for the rest of the top five, we had Daniel Suarez in third, William Byron in fourth, and then Alex Bowman in fifth there. So pretty interesting top five.
Did we talk about an Alex Bowman bet? I dropped the ball on that. Rich was like, go place that bet in the Discord right after we get off. Of course, I forgot to place it, forgot to post anything. Pretty sure we talked about like an Alex Bowman top 5 or top 10 finish. So,
yeah, especially because I was on the whole revenge narrative last week with putting Bowman as my favorite long shot, just with the circumstances of the track and how he was eliminated from the playoffs after that disqualification. And he was driving with a chip on his shoulder, looking to prove himself out there. So, paid off. He got the top 5.
Yeah.
So now let's get into the playoff driver performances here. Now, we do know that the top 2 were playoff drivers, Logano and Bell, first and second. Then we had William Byron in fourth. Denny Hamlin ended up finishing in the 8th position quietly. And Kyle Larson, who went through a bunch of adversity with some pit road issues and falling a lap down, ended up recovering for an 11th place run. So, nice recovery there for Kyle Larson. And then the last 3 drivers, well, they all had terrible days. Ryan Blaney in 32nd, Chase Elliott in 33rd, and then Tyler Reddick, he flipped his way into 35th, man. That was rough.
Yeah, that was a pretty wild wreck. Larson, very disappointing with his pit crew. Had all those issues on pit road to the point where he was so tight that he had to come back onto pit road the following, after he went around. So that just absolutely destroyed his day. The fact that he still came in 11th showed how good he was on this track, and probably going to see a strong performance again from him going into this week. So I think he's certainly a nice bounce back candidate that might command a little lower ownership than normal. Blaney was disappointing, but hung in there, obviously coming out. I think he was involved in that wreck. And then, Elliott and Reddick. Elliott was looking great too. Just, again, got caught up. Reddick was looking great. So hopefully, look, the guys that wreck, I love the guys that did bad the previous week. Those are great spots to attack recency bias going into next week. It's going to naturally keep ownership in check. And a lot of these guys that finished pretty low in this race certainly have the numbers to perform well going into this week. So I think it presents a really good opportunity to take advantage of what the masses are going to stray away from.
Yeah, and I think particularly the name that I want to keep in mind out of this group for this week, especially when you mentioned about that, Tyler Reddick. I think he's the driver to watch out of those 3 that we're talking about there, based on his Homestead history and just based on the circumstances, because, well, Reddick isn't as good at Martinsville, Phil, as a lot of the other drivers that are remaining in the playoffs. So if I'm Tyler Reddick and seeing the situation that I'm in, I'm putting everything into this week's race.
Okay. That is an excellent point. And this is something that I probably need to explore over the next couple of days, is who's looking ahead towards Martinsville, who's looking at this week and putting their chips all in here. So 100%, I think that's a great call on Reddick.
Yeah, because Reddick, he's had a bunch of different underwhelming results at Martinsville in the past. Like, he's had an occasional decent run here or there, but it's not one of his stronger tracks. And if he goes into Martinsville knowing that he has to basically win at Martinsville, it's not going to look good. Not at all. So he'd rather go into this week in order to win, because this is a track where he has a much better shot at it.
I agree.
So let's get into the place differential plays of the week there for the Cup Series race there, Mark. Some of these names probably will surprise you, because the highest top place differential earner this week, Corey LaJoie, gaining 21 spots, starting from 35th, finishing 14th. And then after that, we mentioned the second highest on this list, which was Daniel Suarez. He started 23rd. He finished 3rd. That fuel mileage call definitely paid off well for him. And then gaining 17 positions was John Hunter Nemechek, who started 26th and then just snuck into the top 10, finishing 9th there, Mark.
Yeah, these are a lot of surprising names to show up on this list here. Suarez has been pretty strong this year, but John Hunter Nemechek and Corey LaJoie, some of the biggest place differential winners. That was not in my bingo card going into this race. So
No, definitely not either. Especially when you consider Corey LaJoie with that whole switch from Spire to Rick Ware too.
yeah.
This is only like his fourth race since the switch over. So
I think was it him and Hamlin who almost spun out there though at one point. I think it was like midway through the race where he was on Hamlin's tail and kind of they both got loose there for a second. So he's an aggressive driver, man.
yeah, he's really trying to get all he can get out of the car. And you know what? It paid off this week. If you had he was really cheap too for DFS.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Really paid off.
Yep.
As for the worst place differential plays of the week, well, we mentioned top of the list already. That was Tyler Reddick. He started second, finished 35th out of the race right there. Then losing 24 positions was Austin Dillon. He started 13th. He finished 37th. He wrecked himself very early on. Well, not by himself. He had help with Daniel Hemrick there. Then losing 23 positions was Austin Cindric. He started 11th. He finished in the 34th spot there. Not a great day for each of these three drivers.
Yeah, and there's a lot of data that backs up they should have some strong weeks going into this race as long as we don't see any more DNFs. So I'm on every single one of these guys going into this week. I think it's a great opportunity to target some low ownership drivers.
That could be very interesting for sure. Getting into the stage winners, well, Reddick, he at least won the first stage, so he did get a playoff point and some stage points for his troubles. And then the second stage was won by Christopher Bell, who also ended up leading the most laps at 155, followed by Daniel Suarez at 57. Ty Gibbs led 23 laps. Tyler Reddick led 9. Martin Truex Jr. led 7. Joey Logano led the final 6 laps. Denny Hamlin led 4, as well as Brian Blaney. And then both William Byron and Kyle Larson led 1 singular lap here. Now, getting into the final list of finishers before we move on, we have a lot of names on this list that are interesting. Who do you want to target first here, Mark? Who do you want to shout out?
Oh, Harrison Burton, man. Harrison Burton moving up all those spots to get into 15th position. I think that's an under, because he didn't have the highest place differential, it's flying under the radar a little bit. I think I called him out for one of my cheaper plays last week. So that one stuck out to me. And, what was unfortunate was Hocevar, we were all on. But it's almost like he qualified too high for the kind of car that he was driving. So that was the unfortunate thing for him. He fell all the way back to 23rd after starting 6th, right?
Yeah.
So that was unfortunate. And then, Ty Gibbs, I think he had a penalty on pit road pretty far into the race. So that was a little fluky to see him going all the way to 30th. Brad Keselowski was involved in that wreck. Ross Chastain had a penalty and he finished in 7th. So that was interesting to see. Ross Chastain, I think him and Gibbs both served the penalty at the same time. He got the 7th, Gibbs went to 30th. I didn't catch if Chastain was on that fuel strategy as Hamlin and Logano, or if somehow he just got there in a different way. And then a pretty strong race from Martin Truex too. Maybe a sign of things to come going into this weekend as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Chastain there. He's actually been fairly strong since the playoffs began. Even if you want to go back towards the August Daytona race, he's only had 2 finishes outside the top 15 in that entire span, which is Talladega, Talladega, you can take or leave that result. And then the Charlotte Roval there, where he just did not have a good day there. So he's been fairly strong throughout the playoffs. And the same can be said about Martin Truex Jr. as well. Even within the past 4 races for Truex, he's been 11th or better in 3 of the last 4, with the only outlier being the Charlotte Roval, which was a track that he has admitted is not one of his best tracks. So there you go.
Trying to close it out strong.
Yeah. And while we're on the subject of Truex, I'm just going to mention this, but if you're into the whole betting the storyline, betting the paint scheme thing, he's running a throwback towards his championship winning paint scheme from 2017. So if you do want to make a note of that, keep that in mind.
He's a pretty good price point too. I'm down with that. I gotta get some exposure to Truex this week for sure.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? I mean, I'm teasing it for now, but I'm going to be talking about Truex quite a bit more during the show before it's all said and done. That is for certain.
Love it. I love it.
So, looking at the list over here for Cup this past weekend at Vegas, Chris Buescher, he ended up sneaking into the top 10. Not a bad run for him. Zane Smith ended up finishing around that 16th range once again. He continues to pile on some solid finishes for his price point. And then Justin Haley was just behind him. And then Daniel Hemrick, he ended up scoring another top 20 with a 19th place run over there. He was the cheapest driver the last week, and he paid off well.
Man, wish I rostered him.
I want to say that I think I may have mentioned Hemrick as a potential play last week on the show.
I think you did. I think you were actually like, watch out for Hemrick. He at that price point for what he can do here.
Definitely overachieved.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Higher than we could probably hope for, but very impressive, not to say the least.
And I am going to give a quick shout out to Cody Ware in 21st, who was also ridiculously cheap and got quite a hefty amount of place differential too.
Yeah, part of it, half that place well, not necessarily half, but I mean that one wreck took out a lot of drivers. I mean, Cindric, you had Dylan go out at one point. Obviously, Blaney went down a few laps. Keselowski, Elliott. So just, you had a couple of wrecks that automatically pushed all those guys up 6 or 7 spots right from the get-go. But they outperformed that too. So they still had to pass some other cars to get to where they got to. So very impressive.
Truly. There was a lot of impressive performances, but you know what though? There's still more impressive performances to come. And transitioning over towards our news of the week here, let's get the big one out of the way so far. William Sawalich, he officially signs with Joe Gibbs Racing for the 2025 Xfinity Series season. And he's also going to make his Xfinity Series debut this week at Homestead as well, Mark. So we can get our first look to see how Sawalich will do in an Xfinity Series ride. Two-time ARCA East champion. Yeah, I think this could be one to watch right here. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a fun driver to roster too. Part of DFS is playing the guys that you're going to enjoy watching, and I think this is definitely one of those moments where you get to take advantage of a newcomer to the track and to the series. So I'll probably hit the enter button on Sawalich a few times going into this weekend.
Yeah, I think with William Sawalich, we've seen him at the Truck Series in about 7 different races so far this season. He has 3 top 15 finishes within 7 starts. And going forth and looking at the numbers here, he has scored positive place differential only 1 time so far, surprisingly.
Well, maybe being with JGR too, that helps here as well.
Yeah, it's certainly plausible because when you're comparing Tricon Garage towards which Tricon is one of the best teams in the Truck Series, no doubt, but Joe Gibbs Racing is like one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the Xfinity Series, bar none. He's going to have the best equipment behind them.
Yep.
Now, getting into other stories for this week, we have Ryan Ellis confirming that he's going to be driving with DGM Racing full-time in 2025 for the Xfinity Series over there. We've seen Ryan Ellis basically drive for Alpha Prime Racing a couple times, more than a couple times actually this year. And he's been having some decent runs. He's usually been a very cheap driver for DFS week in and week out. That's been paying off on a couple weeks, especially. Now he's going to go full-time with DGM, which currently fields rides for Kyle Weatherman and usually that 92 car, which is usually about a mid-pack car. So what do you think about this move here, Mark? What do you think about Ellis?
I thought it was I thought it was fascinating how much, I don't know if it was this week or maybe 2 weeks ago when he had the Snapchat paint scheme, but they highlighted the crap out of him on the broadcast, which makes me think that he has NASCAR in his corner. So I think it's a positive thing. I think he's going to be a name that we have to watch out for a little bit more. And I think he's got a lot of support, from the team, but I think there's some other behind the scenes forces bringing him to the table as well. I mean, I swear that broadcast, they highlighted him they probably came back to his car 2 or 3 times and talked about him for 2 to 3 minutes in each of those instances. That's a lot of airtime for Ryan Ellis.
True, especially when you consider he's not for like one of those top tier teams. He's with one of those teams that are more like smaller teams that tried their best in order to compete with the bigger teams. So there you go.
Oh yeah.
Now, this one, I know we briefly talked about this next story before we went on here, but we've seen it now. Frankie Muniz, he's going to be racing full-time with Rome Brothers Racing in the Truck Series starting next year. Full-time Frankie. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm not excited about that one. I got to say, I feel like it's just getting the former movie star kid who's got some money, some extra exposure here. So it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, I mean, I get that because he hasn't been setting the world on fire with his results. But to his credit, though, at least he's actually finishing races, which that can be more said compared to some other drivers there, too. And even if that equipment isn't exactly top notch, I mean, Rome Brothers is not even like the top 4 team out there. He can at least go out there and finish races. And when you keep that in mind, he's probably going to be priced very, very cheaply week in and week out next year. And in some circumstances, that could maybe pay off too, especially if others just end up crashing and you just want a driver that just makes it to the end. We said this before with Daniel Hemrick in the Cup Series in particular. Just a driver that ends up finishing races, even if they're dirt cheap, can make a lineup work and pay off.
That's a really good point. You put it that way, it definitely makes me more open to rostering him next year, but definitely not someone I'm like necessarily targeting on a week-to-week basis by any means.
Yeah, I would say so too until we can get a little more data about how he'll handle the trucks, because he has handled the ARCA series before with some pretty solid results, considering that he doesn't come from a NASCAR background there.
Yeah. Comes from a Disney background or Nickelodeon, one of those, maybe.
Just a sitcom with Malcolm in the middle there.
He had some Disney stuff, didn't he? I could have sworn he was a Disney star at one point.
I think he did do some stuff with them too. I'm trying to remember.
Well, we came here to talk NASCAR exclusively, not Frankie Muniz's IMDb history.
I mean, we can make a different kind of show in order to explore topics like that, Mark. I mean, think about it. All right, so this last story here that I'm just going to briefly throw out there, Team Amerivet. Now, they ran inside the Coca-Cola 600 with that number 50 car with Ty Dillon driving it. They're planning on making a part-time schedule for the Cup Series in 2025, where the team owner was expressing that they want to maybe run between 15 to 17 races. They don't have a driver settled in just yet as far as who's going to drive that car. But to see another team in the Cup Series potentially next year is interesting, especially with it being another open team, though, Mark.
Yeah, just add more to the field here, and that that hopefully that drives a little bit more parity than we already have. So I think anytime you incorporate an additional team, it's gonna stir some things up.
Truly. Now, I'm curious to know what races this team could possibly run. I mean, we do know because they ran at the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte earlier in the year that maybe they could target that race again. But you think maybe we could see this team perhaps maybe at like the super speedways where maybe they could be a little bit more of a contender?
Well, if they're looking at that many races, I think that's certainly possible. Who's going to be driving these cars? Do we know that yet?
No, it is not publicly known about who is going to drive for the team yet, or even what races they're entering in yet. Just that the owner expressed that they're planning on entering between 15 to 17 races.
Maybe you get a guy like a Klickerman or something, maybe? I don't know. Is he accounted for at all?
Well, he's retiring from full-time Xfinity competition at the end of the year.
Yeah. He's straight up retiring though, so he's not gonna try and latch on with anyone else, or is that just
I could see Parker Kligerman maybe doing a part-time stint somewhere on occasion, or maybe doing a couple one-offs here and there.
Yeah, maybe.
That while
So,
he also probably focuses on his NBC gig too, because he's one of the pit reporters.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, our boy Nick Sanchez getting some action on him.
Yeah, Sanchez replacing Kligerman in the Xfinity Series next year. That's going to be pretty interesting, especially because Nick Sanchez has driven for the team before too.
That should be that's exciting to me. I think he's raced pretty well in trucks too, so that seems like a good development and another guy to watch out here for next year.
Oh, truly. Xfinity Series next year is going to be exciting with how many new drivers are going to be rookies, because the rookie class is going to be stacked.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. Definitely going to be some stars popping out. I mean, Carson Kvapil. I always say his name wrong,
Carson
but
Kvapil.
so full time in Xfinity. So that's an exciting development. I think he's been a fun driver to watch.
Yeah, and Connor Zilich is going to be full-time in Xfinity next year as a rookie as well, too, on the same team.
Nice. I mean, it's going to be Xfinity is going to be really fun next year. A lot of different things coming out. And
William Sawalich, as mentioned earlier, is going to be an Xfinity rookie next year.
It should be pretty intense.
Daniel
That's
Dye and
exciting.
Christian Eckes.
Yep. I mean, those are big names. Like Christian Eckes too. I mean, he has been dominant in the Truck Series. So it's curious to see how it translates over with going into Xfinity next year for him too.
It is so stacked, man. It's going to be fun to watch how it all shakes out.
Oh yeah.
But speaking of watching how things are going to shake out, let's get into this week's race finally here. Let's talk ourselves a little Homestead-Miami. Previewing Homestead. So we got ourselves another 1.5 mile intermediate track here. Now, a lot of the drivers especially really love this track because of the amount of grooves that it could provide, and you could also ride up against the wall and just get such a huge speed advantage from riding the top over there. And a lot of drivers especially love that. So this is the second race of the current round of the playoffs in all the series. We're using the intermediate rules package here. The playoff picture is getting very interesting between all three series. But let's talk about strategy here for a moment, Mark. So DFS-wise, we got ourselves another intermediate. We just came off of one intermediate race with Las Vegas there. We had our share of focus on dominators there, and that definitely was the case with Vegas, with Christopher Bell dominating. Now, this week, I think we can expect more dominator action, and then rounding out our lineups maybe with some other balance choices where we can nab some place differential a little bit here and there, and then just rely on some others to just finish the race or score a solid finish where they can. Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
Oh yeah, you gotta pick the right dominator. We're normally looking at one guy to get a large portion, not the entirety of the laps, but there's one guy that's going to separate himself from the pack to get a good significant portion of the laps led, which is going to result in probably fastest laps as well to a certain degree. So I think it's the same strategy as last week. Just a nice balanced lineup, making sure you're getting those dominators in, taking advantage of any layup, place differential opportunities if you have anyone start from the back or anything along those lines, and then just looking for maybe some cheap value options that'll either retain their positions or just increase their place differential a decent amount. So 100%, I think it's a very similar strategy to last week as well.
I think what's interesting about these races sometimes when doing lineup construction is about thinking about how many potential dominators that you may want to roster into your lineup there. You can go with either just one driver and lean on them while boosting up the rest of your lineup, or you can do two potential dominators. Maybe they'll both lead a lot of laps, or maybe you could do three and go complete stars and scrubs approach. What sort of approach do you think you're going to take this week, Mark?
So I'm actually thinking about a ladder. So almost a 1, 2, 3 strategy when it comes to the 3 races. So, there's less laps in the Truck Series versus Xfinity and less laps in Xfinity versus Cup. By the time you get to Cup, we're talking a lot of laps. So there's a lot of laps to record there. I'm looking at the Truck Series, probably 1 dominator. Xfinity, I'll go after 2. And like you said, I'll go after the stars and scrubs approach when it comes to Cup and trying to target, try to squeeze in 3 guys if I possibly can. So that's generally what I'm looking at. I think I want to say Rich will be referencing that a little bit in his overview article when that comes out. But generally speaking, the more laps in the race, the more you have to squeeze in dominators. So 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. I like the approach. Very interesting. How about a betting strategy over here? You think? I know, me personally, I'm going to probably aim towards maybe for outright win, maybe just stick towards the favorites because usually on a track like this, the favorites end up winning a lot of the time and not really a lot of long shots. But what about maybe other kinds of bets that are on your radar there, Mark? What do you got for us here?
Well, from a betting strategy, I'm taking the 1, 2, 3 approach as well. So I'm going to go, like you said, for outright winners, 3 outright winners that, like you said, are betting favorites, and then maybe take a shot on a guy like somewhere in the plus 1,500 to plus 2,000 range. So generally looking at that, and then at the other races, I'll probably go after 2 and then spread it out further down the pack, and then 1 for trucks. I think also top 10s, top 5s, those are the bets I'm going after here for this race. It worked out. I'm kicking myself for not placing that Alex Bowman bet, but that would have worked out. So I think top 5s and top 10s are certainly in play here. And that's probably generally what I'm looking at. I'm not so sure about doing any kind of manufacturer bets or anything like that. I think this far into the playoffs, we have to start looking at drivers more independently versus the manufacturers or the teams here. So I think considering it's the playoffs, I'm looking at more straight top 5, top 10 bets and outright winners.
Good notes, good call outs, good strategy. I like it, Mark. I like it. I think I might do that myself a little bit this week here. So yeah, that's how it's going to be. Getting into the notable and part-time starts for all 3 series this week. These are the drivers that are either part-timers or notables. Let's get into the list over here. For trucks, we have William Sawalich, who is going to be doing double duty this week. He's in the 1 for Tricon Garage for trucks. Nathan Bird's in the 02 for Young's Motorsports. Marco Andretti is back in the 04. Connor Mosak is in the number 7 truck for Spire. Frankie Muniz is going to be driving the number 22 Ford truck with Rome Brothers Racing this week. Connor Daly is going to be back in the 44 for Nice Motorsports, as is Caden Honeycutt in the number 45 truck. That's one I'm watching right there. Then we have Justin Mondique in the number 46. Connor Jones is back with Thor Motorsports once again in the 66. And this one's really curious here because we have Connor Zilich in the number 75 truck. That's going to be very interesting to watch. And then Corey Day is in the number 91.
Yeah, Zilich is the one I had circled as well. So I like going after Zilich this week. And hey, I mean, I haven't looked at his pricing yet, but if Frankie Muniz is the cheapest driver on the slate, worth a shot.
True. Corey Day is also on my watch list for trucks as well, in that Bill McAnally Racing 91, which has seen some favorable runs depending on who's been in that truck. So that's on my list too. Now, getting into the Xfinity list for part-timers here, we have Brad Perez is in the 07 for SS Greenlight Racing. The other SS Greenlight entry, the 14, is being driven by Austin Green this week. Dylan Lupton is in the number 15 for AM Racing. William Sawalich is in the Joe Gibbs Racing number 19 there, making his debut. Eric Almirola is in the 20. Ryan Truex is back in the number 26 for Sam Hunt Racing. That could be very interesting right there. Armani Williams is in the number 35 for Joey Gase Motorsports. Mason Maggio is in the number 45 for Alpha Prime Racing. Thomas Annunziata is in the other Joey Gase Motorsports entry, the 53. Dawson Cram is in the number 74. Connor Zilich is doing double duty in the JRM number 88. Ooh, yeah, that's going to be really fun to watch right there. And then Kyle Weatherman's in the 91 again, and then Nick Lights is in the number 92 for DGM Racing, Mark.
So part of my process, go after the drivers who are getting the extra lap time. So Zilich sticks out to me for Xfinity. Truex, I mean, hey, Martin Truex, Ryan Truex. Maybe it's just a Truex type of weekend, so I don't mind going that way. I would have to look up a little bit more data on him before I just pulled the trigger. But so Wallish falls in line with that strategy that I mentioned with Zilich as well. So I think both of those two guys, I think, are really interesting for Xfinity that, people might not necessarily, go after immediately.
True. I 100% agree with you. Now, as for Cup, it's a very short list, but we have Kaz Grala back in the number 15 for Rick Ware Racing. AJ Allmendinger is back in the number 16 for Colic Racing. JJ Yaley's in the number 44 for NY Racing. And then Chad Fincham is in the number 66 for Power Source. There's really only two of those drivers, but I just named there that I'm even remotely considering, Mark.
Yeah, I like Allmendinger a lot, actually. I think he, I think there's a reason why he's doing this in Cup. We've got some good history for him, so I think Allmendinger at his price point is a really good play.
100% agree. 100%. So that's that. Before we get into our driver picks for the week, just as a reminder, you can go forth and go to fantasyguru.com, get the Game Time MVP all-in package with NBA, NHL, NCAA, PGA, MMA, soccer, and racing, all for just one price there. You can also get at the MVP Platinum or the all-in packages if you want the football and baseball to be covered for 12 months. Go forth and get those packages over at fantasyguru.com. You can also maybe potentially get the BOGO deal, the buy one DFS or betting package, get the other free, but you might have to email support at fantasyguru.com in order to get the nice backroom deal.
But do it. It's worth reaching out. Just go ahead, pull a trigger on it. I mean, this is the time of year where we have the data on a lot of these sports to start bringing home the cash. So already had a very successful first 8 weeks of the football season. I'm telling you, man, football these next 8 weeks is going to be fun.
It's going to be hot stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Now, speaking of hot stuff and spicy stuff, let's get into our hot and spicy driver picks for this week here. This is what I know you've been waiting to talk about, Mark, and I've been waiting to talk about this too. So let's finally get right on into it here. Let's go right into the top price picks to watch this week. Now, usually we do our list here, and it's pretty interesting because we have some overlap and we have some differences this week, Mark.
Yeah, a little different, little overlap. I mean, I think we're both on William Byron. I think you'll see that my approach with my top price drivers, I've got Byron on DraftKings at 10,300, Larson on DraftKings at 11,000, Christopher Bell on DraftKings at 10,800. Every single one of these guys have won a race here, so I like all of them for that. It's easy for me to go after each driver that has not only won a race, but we're also looking at playoff drivers here as well. So love to flood my top price drivers with playoff drivers that are going to qualify pretty well, that I know are going to be looking to strong outings. And then, Kyle Larson is the interesting one just because of the sheer fact that I'm looking at him more for DFS than me. And I think a lot of people are from going after Larson maybe after the disappointing week last week. So we might get him in some controlled ownership here. I love the storyline that you're targeting, though, because I know you got Byron and Bell, but curious what you have to say about Truex and also Hamlin.
Yeah, so as far as Martin Truex Jr. is concerned, well, he only has a few more races left just before he retires from full-time competition. And as mentioned earlier, he's running a throwback paint scheme towards his 2017 championship victory when he won at Homestead in order to win the title back in that year. So with that in mind, and especially this is a really good track for Truex overall, historically speaking. He is a former winner at this track. And looking back towards since that 2017 victory, well, he's only had one finish worse than 12th in that entire span, and he's led basically in 6 of the last 7 Homestead races. So he somehow found his way to the front at some point in most of the races in that span. And as mentioned earlier, Truex has been having a lot of pretty solid runs, especially at the intermediates this season. And in fact, the last intermediate race was Kansas. Well, not Kansas. Vegas was the last one. He finished 6th at Vegas, but before that, he also finished 3rd at Kansas, and he also had finished 4th at Kansas earlier in the year as well, and 7th at Vegas earlier in the year as well. So he's been regularly running inside the top 10 at this track type, and with that in mind, that's a lot to love, and especially with this price being a flat $9K on DraftKings, ooh, that is some great value right there.
I was just gonna say the price point is really awesome. The reason why I think the price point is low or lower than maybe what we would expect is because he does have in the next gen car one DNF'd. But he still finished 29th, which means I think it was a pretty big wreck when that happened here at Homestead. But the other thing about him is that because of that DNF, the numbers are skewed. So the optimizers are going to be skewed to avoid him as well. So we're talking about a guy with a great narrative, potentially low ownership at a value price point where you can squeeze in some top dominators. I'm all about it. I love that play.
Not to mention, I think out of the remaining 3 races that we have left this season, I think this week is Truex's best chance in order to try to get one final win to close out his career with a victory.
The paint scheme kind of it reinforces maybe the commitment towards this race as well for him. So,
oh, truly 100%. And I think if you wanted to place a top 10 bet on him, I'd say go ahead and do it because he's very likely to get there, especially with how many times on these intermediate ovals he's finished inside the top 10 this year. I think it's a no-brainer overall. And as is the case with Denny Hamlin as well, who's finished around that top 15 or top 10 range in all the intermediates as well this year. Now, he's priced a little bit more up there compared to Truex, but he's still under 10K. So if you're looking to save a little salary, I like Hamlin a lot this week. And also for FanDuel as well, Hamlin and Truex are very close in price. Now, Hamlin is still more expensive on FanDuel that compared to Truex, but I do think though that the gap between them is definitely a lot closer. And I think Hamlin, realistically, because he's in the playoffs, he is going to have a little bit better equipment and a little bit more drive to make sure he has a solid run in case Martinsville the week after ends up being an underwhelming result.
So if you like the Truex narrative, I think this is a really fun bet to place. But you could look at the Group B winner on DraftKings. You've got Blaney at plus 20, Hamlin plus 220, Elliott plus 300, Truex with the worst odds at plus 350. So plus 350 in the Group B winner on DraftKings. I think that's a good bet to make there.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna consider that one. Thanks for bringing that one up. So good call out there, Mark.
Good call out on Truex.
Yeah, I mean it writes itself, I think. So getting into our mid-tier drivers to watch now. Here is very interesting because we're basically both in on one driver, but we differ on the other two. We're all in on AJ Allmendinger here. We love the dinger this week for Homestead. The stats don't lie too, especially because in the 2 races he's had with Colleague Racing at this track, both of them were top 5 finishes. And for a driver at that price point, top 5 finish is more than paying out the salary right there.
Oh yeah, I mean, and not to mention, he's probably not going to qualify like in the top 10 by any means. So you're looking at some nice place differential as well. His average start was the 17th and a half position, and those 2 races he finished 3rd and 5th. So there's a reason why he's part-time Cup driving this weekend at the price point of $7,300 on DraftKings. It's going to be hard away from him, and I'm sure he will command some ownership, but it's probably chalk I'm willing to eat here.
Oh, yeah, and you know what? I think you're really gonna wanna eat that because when you look back towards the last 6 races, this is a very interesting stat, Mark. Last 6 races at Homestead that Allmendinger has participated in, he scored either neutral or positive place differential every single time.
Yeah, that's gold right there. I think that just goes into his ownership's going to be high, but I just think it's the right play.
100%. And especially considering he's probably on a driver's high from winning his first Xfinity event of the year too. So that
Oh
also
yeah.
can play into his confidence as well.
Curious your take on Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace.
So Alex Bowman, part of it has to do with the equipment because he is a Hendrick Motorsports driver, and Hendrick is pretty solid at this track overall, especially when you have teammates like Kyle Larson and William Byron to lean on too overall. And Bowman, he's finished inside the top 10 before twice within the last 4 races overall, driving in Hendrick Motorsports equipment. Sure, he's going to probably qualify a little high up there, but I think considering that there's not a lot of mid-tier options that are really going to finish around that range or can consistently contend around that range, and when you consider how great throughout the playoff period that Bowman's been running, I think that he's a driver that we should have some exposure on this week.
Yeah, I like both of those. Bowman particularly for the fact that his team has a pretty good track record. I'm on Daniel Suarez. I got him on DraftKings at $7,200. Austin Cindric at 7,000. So if you look at some of the initial numbers, they don't necessarily jump off the page as anything that you're particularly interested in. But if you look at both of these drivers in the next gen car, Daniel Suarez starts. His average starting position is 19th, and his average finishing position is 13.7. So we're looking at a nice place differential that would put him in the top 15 for a driver at $7,200. That's going to pay off. So I think a veteran in Daniel Suarez, I like going after him. We don't have any DNFs from him either on this track. And then Austin Cindric, he's got 2 races where, and this is the bigger place differential play, but his average starting position was 26 and his average finishing position was 15 and a half. So, I mean, if we're going to get a guy at this price point to give us a plus 11 place differential and get us into the top 15, I think we have to consider both of these guys given, we just have to look for where they qualify, right? And that's going to be
Oh,
everything
yeah.
I think we talked about it off there, maybe on here, where we were all in on Hocevar last week on the podcast, but then he qualified just way too high for Cup. He qualified 6th, so then he finished 23rd, and that killed that type of play. So it's gonna, really look. I'm looking for both, maybe Cindric and Suarez to start in the somewhere between maybe that 25th position to give us the place differential opportunity that's going to help pay these two off.
I actually really love the Suarez call out right there because he was almost on my list as well, just because the recent finishes of his, even both at the track and both recently, have been relatively solid for the price point. And I think people are overlooking him still just because they're like, oh, yeah, he got that 3rd place finish this past week because of fuel mileage. No, he had a decent enough car in order to at least stay up there, too. So
Yeah.
that matters overall as well. Now, Austin Cindric, I do have some concerns about him because he does tend to qualify in that top 15, top 10 range sometimes.
Yeah.
Whereas Suarez, I'm not as concerned about that because he hasn't been as good of a qualifier as Cindric has this year. But this is also playing into, I know I mentioned Bubba Wallace is on my list. I think he kind of can qualify a little bit further back compared to Cindric, even though Wallace is in better equipment overall, too. And especially because Wallace has also led within the last 2 Homestead appearances that he's made, and he finished 6th in his last appearance at the track, too. So, and he's been really good at the intermediates overall this year, either finishing top 20 or top 15 and sometimes even top 10. So I think I like Wallace, and especially because I think people are not going to be paying attention to him as much this week. But people are also forgetting he's in the same equipment that Tyler Reddick is running too.
Oh yeah, no, I love that. And here's the thing: if you're gonna roster Wallace, then it probably makes sense to pair him, right? I love the concept of just rolling out a couple different teams in your lineup and basically building what we call a NASCAR stack. So, love maybe a Reddick Wallace pairing there.
Truly, because 2311, they do very, very good at this track. Just like Joe Gibbs Racing does, provided you can get past maybe some of the engine concerns that they've displayed. But other than that, yeah, riding with the Toyotas there is not a bad call this week because a lot of drivers tend to do run well there.
Generally, we're looking for place differential for these $7,000 guys. We're looking. We got to get place differential, and I think in this range, you got to get him in the top 15 if you're looking to win big. Minimum.
Truly, and if they're starting around like tail end of the top 20, that's a nice sweet spot for me right there. Very nice.
Oh yeah,
spot.
100%.
Now, let's get into our sleepers and value plays. So, this is another case where it is very interesting between us because we both have one driver that we're very much in on, and that being Ryan Preece. I think he is, without question, the best value play on this entire slate right here, Mark.
Yeah, I mean the price point is definitely a big element to this for me, and then I mean, if we get him to finish between that, or somewhere around like the 17th or 18th position, which is pretty much what he's doing on this track so far in the next gen car, that's going to be more than enough to pay off the price. It's going to be very interesting to see where he qualifies. A 13th place finish and a 21st place finish. If we see him qualify around the 21st spot, he is 1,000% in play.
You know why I say he's probably my favorite value of the slate is just because, well, looking back at the numbers here, 5 starts at Homestead, 4 times he has finished with positive place differential, and he scored his best career finish in his last appearance at Homestead of 13th after starting 29th. Now this year, look back towards all the races on the 1.5-mile intermediates, and I'm not counting Darlington or Nashville through this like some people on some websites do. Every single time that Ryan Preece has gone out there and raced on this track type, positive place differential every single time. He's
There
been
you
paying off, and really, and the thing is too, he is not a strong qualifier. He's not qualified very, very well in a lot of these sorts of races. Usually qualifying usually in the 30s or the mid 20s, most of the races on this track type. He's paid off every single time, and he's below 6K on DraftKings. He's a flat 5K on FanDuel. Very easy to roster, and he even leaves some flexibility right there too. You can't ask for much more than that, Mark.
Yeah, no, it's definitely my favorite play in my opinion under that sub 6K. So big on Preece, FanDuel too. I mean FanDuel he's $5,000. So. But big on them. I threw in Austin Dillon on DraftKings at $6,700 and Michael McDowell at $6,300. So, Austin Dillon is surprisingly pretty darn good here himself. In the next gen car, we've got 3 races, 2 top 10s. He's been in the top 20 all 3 races. He's finished as high as 4th, and his lowest. We're looking at 12th. So he almost, finished all 3 races in the top 10 here. I think Austin Dillon in a week where he disappointed anyone that rostered him last week. So this is another bounce back, target the recency bias type of week. I love him as a play at this price point, and I think his ownership will be pretty low here as well.
So I actually don't mind the Austin Dillon call out because historically he's been very good here, but I do also have some slight concerns because he's been very boom or bust on this track type this season. Because you look towards a lot of his intermediate finishes, he's had his fair share of say 2 to 3 top 15 finishes at this track type before, but then all the other finishes on this track type have been either DNFs or finishes where he just his car was not good at all. So it's a matter of figuring out which Austin Dillon is going to show up this week. And I think that's going to be the important thing to keep in mind. So He's not on my list for now, but he could pop up later. It depends on practice and qualifying a little bit for me. And the same goes with Michael McDowell. And McDowell, I think, is a little bit harder to trust just because in the terms of DFS, he's a really great qualifier, unlike Austin Dillon. Whereas Austin Dillon has a better chance of qualifying further back. I think McDowell, he qualifies within that top 15 range at most of the races at this kind of track this season, and sometimes even top 10. And when you get towards a driver of that low a price, and then you look at the practice numbers and you see it's not up to snuff and everything, whereas he doesn't have it on race trim, but only short run speed, it makes me hard in order to really trust Michael McDowell overall this week.
I feel more confident in Dillon showing this week over McDowell just because I think Dillon will bounce back. McDowell, if you think about it, his average starting position is 13th here. So just like you said, the signs indicate that he should qualify pretty well. Out of the 3 races, his best finish was 6th. His worst was 22nd. So he's definitely a 50-50 to go one direction or the other and either make or break your lineup. Both of these plays that I mentioned here, just to add to what you're saying, Sean, these are tournament plays here. So certainly, not going to make you feel comfortable bringing them into your lineup. But also, if you're looking at GPPs, that's how you win a GPP is you play with some uncomfortable drivers.
That is also true, which is why I don't mind the Austin Dillon call out in particular, because I think that's one that has the potential to pay off this week. Whereas McDowell, he's very much historically been very boomer bust at this track.
Talking about boomer bust, you got a guy on there in Corey LaJoie, right? I mean, well, I'm curious. He's been a pretty aggressive driver, but what are you thinking as far as him goes going into this track?
So overall, when it comes to Corey LaJoie, he's had some races with some positive place differential before at Homestead, and his last appearance was his best career finish at the site of 20th. And basically, looking back towards his past finishes, he scored positive place differential on 4 different occasions in 7 starts. And you look towards recent finishes since joining Rick Ware Racing, and I don't think a lot of people are really talking about this with Corey LaJoie, but he's been really overperforming with 3 top 20 finishes in the last 4 races since joining Rick Ware Racing, and that includes 2 mile-and-a-half intermediates where he finished 15th at Kansas and 14th this past weekend at Las Vegas. I think people are not paying enough attention to this. And, I think people are also going to ignore it because, A, it's Corey LaJoie, who they don't consider a top name to finish well, and B, because he drives for Rick Ware Racing, who some people still think are not going to be up on the level of some of those mid-pack teams. But I think really this is another week where LaJoie can really prove that, especially for the price point, he can be worth rostering this week overall.
Yeah, I love the momentum. I think that's the biggest selling point there, and the veteran experience that has something to do with it as well for me. So I like getting him into my player pool for sure.
Definitely, and I really think that considering his price point, I think that not as much people are going to be on him as they should, and that's going to pay off for us. And I think the same thing is for Daniel Hemrick, but the thing I especially like about Hemrick is that he has the numbers in order to back it up too, because in one previous start he made with Richard Childress Racing at Homestead back in 2019 in the Cup Series, he started around 25th and finished 12th at this track in the Cup Series. He's been pretty solid at this track in the Xfinity Series before, with 4 finishes of six or better in about 6 or 7 starts. Then basically you look towards his finishes on the mile-and-a-half intermediates this year. He has finished in the top 20 in almost all of them, Mark. Almost all of them.
And he's what is his price point? He is pretty cheap, $5,400. So if you're looking to scrape the bottom of the barrel, that's certainly a way to do it.
I think the bottom of the barrel actually has some pretty playable options this week, even more than maybe some of the 6,000 guys, where you won't know how good they're going to be until we see practice and qualifying. These drivers here, I have a little bit more confidence in just based on their situation and the results that they've shown both at this track and the season.
And you got some other names down here, Gilliland, Harrison Burton. I mean, these are Gilliland, I think he's got some good track experience. Harrison Burton, we're talking about some nice momentum as of recent. So I think there's a lot of these guys and that's why, look at the Cup and we're looking at multiple dominators. I think the approach is to squeeze 3 in and then just kind of scrape the bottom of the barrel to fill out your lineup.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid approach in order to take this week. Really, I think if you go with the 2 or 3 potential dominator route, I think that might be the way to go.
Yeah,
2 or 3.
for sure. Yep.
Now let's get into our core 4s here. Starting off, I'm going to go with my betting core 4 here. I've got Kyle Larson at plus 330, Tyler Reddick at plus 600, Christopher Bell at plus 600, and William Byron at plus 700. Yeah, I know it's all boring there because it's just the top 4 drivers acknowledged as the favorites in order to bet on for outright winning. But I really think that one of the top favorites is going to end up winning this race very likely. So I'm also going to throw in a not so boring long shot bet of Bubba Wallace at plus 2,800 just because, like as mentioned, the equipment, he's had some decent results recently at this track. I like it enough in order to try it there, Mark.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. Especially if again, it's like pairing your bets with the team. So if you want to do like a Reddick and a Bubba Wallace bet and just go all in on 23-11, I think that's a viable approach. I got Byron Bell, Reddick, and Truex. So Byron Bell and Reddick are all plus 600 on DraftKings. I avoided Larson. The reason why I avoided Larson is just his odds are plus 330 for a winner bet. I just don't think it's good enough in my opinion. And yeah, I think he'll have a bounce back week, but will he win it after all those trouble and all that trouble and issues on pit road? I mean, look, he is, I agree with what Rich and you have said in the past. He's one of the top drivers out there, if not the best, most talented driver you might see on the track each and every week. But at the end of the day, you're only as good as your whole team, and that team fell flat on their face last week. I hope they come out strong. Truex is my last one, plus 1,600. So I think those are, you got plenty of payoff there for a guy that's got all the storylines and narratives. How can you not bet a storyline in Truex here? So I'll round it out with 3 favorites, and then I'll do my one shot call with Truex going with the narrative.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Now, getting into our DFS core forms, I'm just going to say this, but we pretty much overlap with the exception of one driver back to back here. So we're both on Christopher Bell. He's 10,800 on DraftKings and 13,500 on FanDuel. William Byron at 10,300 on DraftKings and 13,000 on FanDuel. AJ Allmendinger at 7,300 on DraftKings and 7,200 on FanDuel. And the difference for me, at least, is I have Ryan Preece as my last driver at 5,900 on DraftKings and 5K on FanDuel there. Give us your one difference, Mark.
Yep. So Austin Dillon, I ended up selecting for my different one at $6,700. I just think that the price is a little high, which will command very low ownership on a guy that can perform very well on this track. I like the bounce back here. It'll make your lineup very different. And Byron and Bell, Allmendinger, I'm on those guys. I think Byron's been running very well. We haven't talked about Byron enough here tonight, but there's a lot of indicators out there as to why Byron should have a good race. And Bell, I think he's going to be ticked off. He's going to be ticked off about last week, leading all those laps and not winning the race. He's a playoff driver. Allmendinger, obviously, for the track record. So I think we're, us both being in agreement coming to those 3 drivers from separate places, I think is a really good sign. It's all about figuring out what you're going to do with that 4th. And then obviously for everyone else building out their lineups for the 5th and 6th.
Truly, 100%. And you know what? Just to your point about Byron, his finishes the last 4 weeks have been absolutely crazy consistent, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, what is it? 80% in the top 5 or something like that?
He's been top 5 in each of the last 4 races this season.
Yeah. It's crazy.
That is crazy stuff. The only driver that's really been on that similar sort of performance level during the playoffs, really, you can argue, is Christopher Bell. Since the playoffs began, he's never finished worse than 14th, and he's been top 10 in all the other races too, which is impressive.
Yeah, one other thing about Byron is, you think about dominators. So Kyle Larson has the most laps led in the next gen car out of active drivers with 300 on this track. William Byron is in second with 159 laps led. So I mean, both of those guys are in play, but I think Byron, has a good probability of leading some laps here in this race.
Also, interesting small statistic to point out here too. So far, there's only one driver that's led over 1,000 laps this season throughout, and that's Kyle Larson at 1,614. Christopher Bell is exactly one lap away from hitting 1,000 let this season.
I think he gets it this weekend for sure.
Man, we should have. I wish the books had a bet to see if he'll get the lap led this week or next week at Martinsville. That would be fun.
Well, I mean, I would imagine the odds on that will be pretty tough if you're going to go the Martinsville route. But I mean, they always got bets like that on Prize Picks. I don't think they have anything necessarily posted yet. They just have fantasy points, it looks like. But keep an eye on Prize Picks for laps led. That might be a really good bet to place, depending on what they post over there.
True. Now, that's going to do it for this week's Race Guru Thunder Hour. It's been fun having you back on to the show once again, Mark. And, we're also thinking about Rich Mileto, who's been very busy with a lot of stuff this week, too, as well. But you know what? It's always a great time to go out there fishing with the marlin, as they say.
Oh yeah, catching some sharks here, hunting down some wins, some money.
Yeah.
Appreciate you having me on.
Likewise. So be sure to go out there to fantasyguru.com, get any of the packages, email support at fantasyguru.com. Be sure to like, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio-only version on fantasyguru.com. Be sure to drop us a line in the Discord channel. Let us know what you think of the podcast this week, and which drivers that we're going to be on, and Mark is going to be contributing Xfinity content later in the week, and then I'm going to be covering Cup. That's going to do it. Thank you all so much for watching the Race Guru Thunder Hour. And what's that you got there, Mark?
I just want to add, I think I'm going to try and play trucks tomorrow. So if anyone wants to hit me up about trucks, I'll hang in the Discord right around the time of that race too. Or it's going to be Saturday earlier in the day. So they're qualifying tomorrow though.
Yeah, we got the whole double header with Xfinity and trucks this week. That's a lot of fun in order to watch. So there you go. Right in the midst of college football too.
Yep. Should be a fun weekend of sports here. So.
All right, everyone. Thank you all for being a part of the Race Guru Thunder Hour. See you all next time. Peace.